Listen up, guys, before this gets taken down by the lizard people.
It's the Bueno Report.
2 weeks ago, all of ACAB Twitter had a collective orgasm as Donald Trump was banned from Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, and Instagram. Naturally, everyone's John Wayne enthusiast grandpa took to Facebook to express their displeasure with George Soros and Bill Gates taking a long enough break from controlling the weather to put the final soy-based infinity stone in conservatives' online graves. They finally fully weaponized the media, of course, to once and for all silence powerful truth tellers, leaders of the revolution, and anyone who refuses to swallow the communist pill. Trump's account was banned shortly after the Capitol Hill riots, which would be swell if a tall, handsome, funny Latin man wearing basketball jerseys made a video analyzing that event. With Twitter claimed Trump incited violence, leading to the riots, among many other instances of harassment from his followers. Trump even tried to circumvent the ban, tweeting this from the POTUS account, and Twitter took that tweet down immediately. Mike Hahn, Trump's social media director, objected that journalists are allowed to share Trump's words while his campaign is not. Chaos ensued immediately. Those on the right were enraged, quoting George Orwell with whatever Twitter freedom they had left, while the left rejoiced like they just watched a Catholic church get demolished in favor of a Planned Parenthood clinic being built. Did Twitter do the right thing? Yo, so how much time do we have? So not an hour? Fuck. Let me start by outlining. Sometimes I think the free speech conversation shifts the goalposts too much. Let's say free speech is supporting the freedom of an individual or group to express their opinions and ideas without legal penalty or censorship. This doesn't mean you're free from consequence, it means you're allowed to express your opinion. From a legal standpoint, Twitter did nothing wrong. They did nothing illegal. Ultimately, Twitter has every right to do what they want. They're a private company, it's their platform, it's their money. This applies to other issues too. Example, some people had issues with the NBA promoting BLM and purposefully ignoring the issues going on in China. Ultimately, it's the NBA's money. That's not always uplifting or moral or pleasing or just or correct. However, they get to do whatever they want with it. The problem with that line of thinking in this scenario is there aren't as many social media platforms out there with the power and gravity of Twitter. In total, there are probably 5 to 10 main social media outlets. There are hundreds of millions of accounts on those popular social media accounts, so the idea of, well, go make your own social media platform doesn't hold as much weight, and especially when you try to, Apple takes it off their app store and it gets suspended by Amazon. If a certain company has a monopoly on the kind of platform you're trying to create, the argument of censorship gets much bigger. Here's my frustration with the whole Parler and Trump saga. What do you think people deemed alt-right are going to do when their accounts get restricted and tweets get taken down? Do you think they're going to say, wow, I'm a racist piece of shit and I need to change my ways? I seem to be hated by this group of people, so I should try to please them. Oh, and they banned my app from their massive platform, significantly reducing the chances of me getting it off the ground. This must mean I'm terrible, and I need to come to the light. Or is it much more likely they'll gain a strong hatred for the people banning them, lash out, and get driven further into their own schools of thought? Especially if you're someone who believes that conservatives and Trump supporters in general are inherently bad people. Is an inherently bad person going to come to the light when they get boxed out? They're still speaking to each other, except now it's private and they're just more upset. I think it's admirable and uplifting that a lot of people think social media spaces shouldn't be spaces where hate can be spread and we can incite violence. Nobody likes violence, unless it supports their political cause. The problem is we all have different definitions of what hate speech is, and once we start drawing lines in the sand, it's extremely difficult to be consistent. If you're going to ban people for violent tweets, or inciting violence, Jesus, Reza, or flag them for tweeting about the election being stolen, you need to be consistent and you can't let anything slip or allow political agendas or narratives to get in the way. This does not justify Trump, his recklessness.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter...
Or any of the dumb shit he's tweeted over his career on Twitter. Neither does it excuse any poor decision he's made as president. The idea that questioning the Twitter ban makes you alt-right or a bigot is insane. And I've seen this argument from Donald Trump Jr. The Ayatollah in Iran is allowed to have a platform despite executing gays and only allowing gender transition surgery to participate in heterosexual relationships. That being said, it's about the Twitter rules. So if the Ayatollah doesn't violate the Twitter rules and just kills gay people in his spare time, does he deserve space on the platform? Moving on. If Pornhub is culpable with sex trafficking and having child porn on their site, does that violate Twitter guidelines? Because if it doesn't, does that mean they deserve an account still? We can all agree that sex trafficking is bad, at least I hope. So is that worthy of kicking them off the platform? And if you guys are looking for a new porn site, just hit up lemonparty.org. You're welcome. Twitter trying to regulate the behavior on the app doesn't just come to the chagrin of conservatives. When Trump was diagnosed with COVID, he definitely pretended to have that shit. A ton of memes came out hoping he died. Twitter acted swiftly, stating this was against the rules. And some really hated this, implying that people from marginalized communities face discrimination and hate and violence threatened on them much more commonly than recognized. And that's exactly the problem. Twitter misses it because it's extremely hard to play gatekeeper in a fair, consistent manner when there are that many users and that much room for interpretation on hate speech. Look, I'm big on free speech, which means if someone wished death upon Trump, that's their prerogative, regardless how anyone else feels about it. Trying to run around and please everyone is an impossible task, especially if you are a social media company. Even if you impose rules, there will be a bunch of pricks who push the line to try to get a reaction because they have nothing else better to do with their time. After a certain point, I think there should be playground rules when it comes to Twitter. If you say some wild shit and people come for you, that's the game. Nobody's coming to save you. One of the things I don't like about social media is it's made people feel much tougher than they actually are. They forget that if you say some wild shit in person, you'll get smacked the fuck up. Some things don't need a reaction. Not tweeting or sending a DM to a person who you have questions about their content can go much farther than pouring gas on the fire. If you don't like Twitter because it's toxic, you need to get off the platform or set limitations. The block and mute buttons exist for a reason. That being said, online harassment is a very real thing, and there are some people out there with really shitty intentions, so the solution is often case to case. When you start to dictate what info can get out there, you set a dangerous precedent. It's not up to social media moderators to think for us. We need to make communication mistakes and learn on our own. If you say you're going to ban hate speech, when does something cross the line of roasting or just joking to hate speech? How do you measure that? Bans are a fascinating thing. When peanut allergies started popping up in elementary schools, a lot of schools banned peanuts, which actually created more peanut allergies and worse allergic reactions. Now, all this being said, I honestly cringe when I think of Twitter where everything is fair game. And when I look at some of the most famous Twitter bans in history, I actually found myself going, these are actually pretty decent reasons. Freedom of speech is not always uplifting and moral and inspiring. It can get difficult and unpleasant. However, it's the best and fairest way to go, at least in my opinion. Because who is really to blame in this scenario? Is it Trump? Is it Twitter? Is it human nature for being attracted to things that get us riled up? After all, that's how the algorithm works. Is it the algorithm? Is it social media in general? It's a really complex issue, and it's tough to say for sure what the true root of the problem is. There are a lot of factors. Because I'm a loyal centrist, true to the cause, and I believe in personal agency 150%, almost to a fault, I'll say it starts with us. Majority of people on the planet don't do enough work on themselves in the first place, and adding social media to the mix does not make for a productive mix of emotion, pseudo-dialogue, and us believing we're smarter than we really are. Last thing I'll say before I go, I don't envy Jack Dorsey or any social media owners. Thanks, guys.